This problem asks you to find the upward buoyant force acting on the crustal root of a continent in isostatic equilibrium with the mantle. So in this problem, we're going to model the continental crust as a cylinder with cross-sectional area A, with a height above the surface, above the mantle, little h, a height below the mantle, big H. The continental crust rock has a density rho c, and the surrounding mantle has a density rho m. So everything below the surface is the crustal root, and everything above the surface we could think of as a mountain. Now, what's important to understand is that in isostatic equilibrium, there is no motion between the mantle and the crust. So that means that the forces that govern this picture must balance. So there are two principal forces. There's the downward gravitational force, and then there's the upward buoyant force. And because there is no motion, and because the continental crust and the mantle are in isostatic equilibrium, we can say then that the forces cancel, or that F buoyant equals F gravitational. So that really simplifies the problem. That means that if we calculate the downward gravitational force, then we automatically know the upward buoyant force. So what is the downward gravitational force? Well, we know that the gravitational force is just a play on F equals ma. In this case, it is equal to F equals mg, where g is the gravitational acceleration. Here on Earth, that's about 9.8 meters per second squared. The challenging part is to know what is m. Well, if we come back over here to our picture, we see and we know that the density of mantle rock is much greater than the density of crustal rock. So what that means is that this crustal rock below the surface is something of a density anomaly, right? It has pushed more dense mantle out of the way and has replaced it with less dense material. So this crustal rock essentially acts as something like negative mass. Because the fluid-like mantle does not want to be displaced, it is implementing this upward buoyant force to fight against displacement. So let's think about this gravitational force again. So the effective mass is essentially just going to be the sum of the negative mass here and the mass of the mantle displaced. That is to say that we're going to treat the crustal rock that's displacing the mantle as a negative mass, and we're going to treat the displaced mass of the mantle as a positive mass. And we're just going to call this the effective mass. So the effective mass, me, is going to be the difference between the mass of the mantle displaced and the mass of the crustal rock that is currently filling in this displacement. So the mass of the mantle and the mass of the crust are something that we can calculate. We know, and I'll just come up over here, that density equals mass divided by volume, which, when we rearrange this, means that mass equals density times volume. So what is the volume of this displaced mantle? Well, we're modeling this as a cylinder. And so the volume of the displacement equals the cross-sectional area A down here, or up here, times big H, or the height of this displacement. Great. So we can then say the mass of the mantle that's displaced equals the density of the mantle times the displaced volume element, AH. And the mass of the crust that's filling in this displacement is the density, of the density of the crust times the volume element of the displacement. All right, so I just had to check to make sure that I didn't mix up my M's and C's, but this all looks correct. All right, so because the effective mass is the difference between these two, then we could say that the effective mass equals the mass of the mantle, the density of the mantle divided by the density of the crust times the volume element. And that's, again, just this difference here using these results. So we can come back over here to our gravitational force. And now we know M. It's the effective mass. So force of gravitation equals this, the density of the mantle minus the density of the crust, times the volume element, and then times the gravitational acceleration. And because we have this force balance up here, we now know the buoyant force on the crustal root. It's just equal to this gravitational force. So we've calculated the buoyant force acting on a crustal root in isostatic equilibrium with the surrounding mantle. So that's it for this video. And in the next video, I'm going to explain a little bit more about isostatic equilibrium and pressure.